Near the Trebia River in northern Italy, the Carthaginian general Hannibal faced the Roman consul Tiberius Sempronius Longus. Hannibal had just crossed the Alps, and the Romans, eager to confront him, marched toward his position. On a bitterly cold winter morning, Hannibal lured them into crossing the icy river, leaving them shivering and exhausted. Meanwhile, his own troops were well-fed, warm, and prepared. Hidden infantry units waited in ambush along the flanks, and cavalry threatened the rear. As the Romans engaged, the ambush was sprung. Surrounded and unable to form an effective defense, the Roman army suffered massive losses. Trebia showcased Hannibal's skill in strategy, timing, and psychological manipulation, using weather and terrain as deadly weapons. The Battle of Lake Trasmiene was fought in 217 BC along the northern shore of Lake Trasmiene in central Italy. The Carthaginian army was commanded by Hannibal, while the Roman forces were led by the consul Gaius Flaminius. Determined to bring Hannibal to battle after earlier defeats, Flaminius aggressively pursued him, ignoring cautious advice and failing to properly scout the terrain. Hannibal recognized this impatience and deliberately chose ground that would favor a large-scale ambush. The battlefield was a narrow strip of land between the lake and a series of wooded hills. Hannibal secretly positioned his infantry and cavalry along the slopes and concealed them overnight. In the early morning, heavy fog blanketed the area as the Roman army marched into the confined space in column formation, not expecting immediate combat. Once the Romans were fully committed and stretched out along the road, Hannibal gave the signal. Carthaginian troops suddenly descended from the hills, striking from the front, flanks, and rear at nearly the same moment. The Romans had little time to organize proper lines of battle. Units were isolated from one another, and confusion spread quickly. Many soldiers were forced back toward the lake, where some drowned attempting to escape, while others were cut down in close quarters fighting. The ambush became a slaughter. Thousands of Romans were killed, including Flaminius himself, and many more were captured. Lake Trasmiene stands as one of the largest and most perfectly executed ambushes in ancient warfare, further proving Hannibal's brilliance in using terrain, surprise, and timing to destroy a larger force. The Battle of Cannae was fought in 216 BC near Cannae in southern Italy. The Carthaginian army was commanded by Hannibal, while the Roman forces were led by the consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. Determined to crush Hannibal after earlier defeats, Rome assembled one of the largest armies in its history, confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm him. Hannibal, however, arranged his forces with careful precision. He placed his weaker infantry in a bulging, crescent-shaped center with his strongest African infantry on the flanks and cavalry on both wings. As the Romans advanced in dense formation, they pushed the Carthaginian center backward. What appeared to be a collapse was actually controlled withdrawal. The center gradually bent inward, drawing the Roman army deeper into the line and compressing their formation. Meanwhile, Hannibal's cavalry defeated the Roman horsemen on both wings and swept around to the rear. At the critical moment, the African infantry on the flanks pivoted inward, attacking the Romans from both sides. The cavalry then struck from behind, completing a perfect double envelopment. Surrounded on all sides and packed too tightly to maneuver effectively, the Roman army was systematically destroyed. Tens of thousands were killed in one of the most devastating defeats in Roman history, and Cannae became a lasting example of tactical genius and encirclement warfare. The Battle of Zama was fought in 202 BC near Zama in North Africa and marked the decisive encounter between Hannibal and Scipio Africanus. After years of devastating campaigns in Italy, Hannibal was recalled to defend Carthage from Scipio's invasion of North Africa. Unlike earlier battles, both commanders understood each other's tactics and prepared carefully. Hannibal assembled a large force that included war elephants and a mix of mercenaries, newly raised troops, and his seasoned Italian veterans. Scipio, having studied Hannibal's methods, organized his army with flexibility and discipline, ready to counter the Carthaginian strengths. The battle began with Hannibal sending forward his war elephants in an attempt to break the Roman lines. Scipio arranged his legions in columns with open lanes between them, allowing many of the elephants to pass through harmlessly while Roman soldiers used noise and missiles to frighten and wound them. Some elephants panicked and disrupted Carthaginian ranks instead. With the elephant charge neutralized, the infantry advanced and engaged in fierce fighting. Hannibal placed his most experienced veterans in a final line, hoping they would deliver the decisive blow after the earlier lines had worn the Romans down. For a time, the struggle was intense and evenly matched. However, Roman cavalry, bolstered by their Numidian allies, defeated the Carthaginian horsemen and drove them from the field. At the critical moment, the cavalry returned and attacked Hannibal's army from the rear. Pressed from the front by Roman infantry and struck from behind by cavalry, the Carthaginian forces were surrounded and ultimately broke. The defeat forced Carthage to seek peace, ending the war and establishing Rome as the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean.